Blessed love, I am the Honorable Priest Isaac. I am an official priest within the realms of Rastafari of the Ethiopia-Africa Black International Congress. I also hold a certification in the craft of ARCHAEOASTRONOMY from Politecnico di Milano in Italy. Our universe and its maker has always been an intriguing subject for humankind. Astronomy is the study of everything in the universe beyond the Earth's atmosphere. Ancient astronomy is similar, but pays special attention to the physical and spiritual values of stars, planets, moons, and other celestial objects. It also brings in the terrestrial component, being things on an earthly plane, such as plants, human organs, and connects them to the heavenly bodies. In this course, you will learn the makeup of various planets and stars, how to locate them in the night sky, along with their associated constellations. You will also be taught about the earliest civilizations known for their astronomical comprehension, namely Kush, also known as ancient Ethiopia, Kemet, called Egypt today, the Dogons, and the Bozos, as well as the civilization of Sumer. You will also learn about black holes, their nature and origin, as well as how the ancients viewed them. Ancient astronomy is the mother of archaeoastronomy and astrotheology. Both subject areas are covered by the Priest Isaac's Institute of Holistic Knowledge. Sign up today. Visit our website, priestisaacinstitute.com, or email us, priestisaacinstitute@gmail.com, for more information. Oh, blessed love, royal family, Salamta and Tenestalin. Give thanks for your presence with us even at this hour. Of course, you know, we glorify and give thanks to the Father and the Mother of creation. And of course, we greet you in the name of Nagast and Nagast, power and might of the Holy Trinity, Emperor Haile Selassie I. Family, it's a joy to be with you once again. Of course, you know, this is Rasta Roundtable, Rastafari Gathering, Rastafari Reasoning. Of course, you don't know how it is. We do it every Thursday evening at the hour of 8 p.m. right here on Radio Anu, with some exclusive streaming and presentations on YouTube as well. So you can also look out for us there, and even some clips on the Instagram and some on Facebook. Make sure it gets all the way around. But of course, the home of Rasta Roundtable is Radio Anu. Every Thursday evening, make sure you tell a friend this is where the gathering is. Of course, it's myself, Honorable Ras Isern and King Anko Madrid. Let me just say blessed love to the brotherhood, as the ones they could unmute their mic there. And let me just, you know, hear a word sound to the kings. Blessed love, family. How is everyone this evening? Ras and Koma.
Yes, sir. Give thanks to be here again. Blessed love, you know, Rastafari to the family. Glad to be here again to reason and full of vibes. Don't know.
Give thanks.
Yes, Sebastian. Yes, well, greetings to all ones, and likewise, I'm just, you know, I mean, happy to be back in the tigerness, you know, you go. And to, you know, reason share with the community still, you know.
Positive.
Yeah, tonight it is going to be an Irish show because, you know, I've been just looking up some notes as you indicated that we'll be looking at the Kebra Nagast and so on. So some interesting perspective will be coming out here according to how man seeing this thing in this time still, because you know there are depths to this thing, you know what I mean? I mean, most time when we look at these, we think more historically, but there are other aspects to it that very, very important to also grasp and appreciate
True.
as I continue
Right.
in our learning process as a community and as a people, you know?
True.
Highly
That's the part, right. And as I said earlier, even without saying the validity, but because even if a man may not look at it the same way that you look at it, but that doesn't mean they don't see the value in it. And
true.
these are the things we kind of try to balance out even on Rasta Roundtable. I think we're doing a good job at that too, to be honest.
Yeah.
Yes,
Our perspective really valid.
Yes.
You understand? Because, you know, rainbow make up of many colors, but one rainbow still, you know what I mean?
Rastafari. Give thanks, give thanks. Well, to start the reasoning, you know, I'm going to ask King Ancoma to kind of give us a little preface, but, you know, the rabbi himself, representing the Lion of Judah Society, Rasai Adonis Tafari has also stepped in, so let us just acknowledge my Lord. Yes, King, Tenestalin, Salamta to the eye, blessed love.
Salam to Tenestalin to the eye, honorable priest, and Ras Isaac, Rastafari brothers right here. Excuse me for the lateness.
Good one.
For one particular document, catching the message, documents here, some that we publish, even getting into the linguistics, the language, but there's one particular document. Hopefully I might just try to look for it. I was having another reasoning with a couple of brothers, one brother in particular, Hail Up Ross Seymour, international, I would duly elect the international chaplain, who was reasoning on the Kebra Nagast issue. Subject matter. And it's another very, very important book, but we'll bring that forward in our due turn. And yes, we're like one of the prime disciples of the Rabbi Rastafari Kedamawi Haile Selassie in Yeshua's name. Yes, I. So, right here, give thanks. Hail up Akuma. Yes, I. Yes, I.
Thanks, my Lord, all powers. Well, we're going to go straight into it now, Brother Ancoma. I think I will leave it to the eye to just, you know, give an eye, especially the family. Just a quick rundown or run up, as they would say, from your perspective. What is the Kebra Nagast and the importance of it, and from any angle, its history, you know, the importance, what it's all about, and then we'll take the discussion from there, my Lord.
Well, as most of I who follow Ethiopian culture and Rastafari movement, we know that the Kebra Nagast is held very dearly in the Ethiopian church, and I believe is actually part of canon, like scripture. They regard it almost like sacred scripture, you know. And it is a book that have legitimized the rulership of the Ethiopian emperors, you know. And it was very key and important in validating the Israelite strain of the Israelite origin of the kings of Ethiopia. Now. You understand? Now, in the academic world, it is acknowledged that it really is a reduction from two different documents. It is talk about the Sheba cycle, and then there's talk about the Caleb cycle. Now, these two cycles taking place, let me say, about 1,500 years apart, right? So you would have the Sheba cycle, where relating a story and a narrative of things what was supposedly transpired 3,000 years ago, right? 1,000 BC, around there. So, and then the Caleb cycle, giving information about all around the late 5th and 6th century common era in this normal in this common era, you know. So it have Old Testament tradition in it, and it have certain New Testament Christian theology in it. It also have elements from apocryphal texts of the Old Testament as well as the New Testament, and it also have certain Quranic references and things like that too. So that's just a kind of a summary of the gist of the content and the context of the Kebra Nagast from my perspective.
But before you come off the stage there, but that's very good. In fact, you went. I think you went deep. I wouldn't say went deeper than I would expect, because I would expect you to go deep. But honestly, I think you kind of you swiftly dived down past the surface and you went real deep.
True. Good.
Yeah, even when you start to talk about the different accounts, I'm not sure if any one of those cycle accounts has to do with. There's another in my studying. There's another manuscript that they tend to equate the Kebra Nagast to. It's called the Persian Kings, and it is as if. And anytime I come across this history, it kind of reminds me of how King Islanders put the narrative. It gives this impression as if the Kebra Nagast was like a borrowed story from something older, coming from the Persian kings, which was really a similar book of their bloodline to kind of justify their position. And so that's one aspect of history that would have said that. But I would like to bring in Rasta on this here before I know that we're going to talk about different aspects of the Kebra Nagast, especially the history within it and the meaning of it. But before we go there, I want us to kind of clarify, because this might be one of them subjects that take more than one program. I want to kind of clarify the history of the book itself, the manuscript itself, because one of our previous reasoning that we had here, it is true that reasoning why I decided for us to touch this subject, because, you know, when Raskwame was here, he was talking about, of course, the New Testament and where the New Testament fits in to the Ethiopian history. And of course, we all know by now that we've been having discussions as it relates to the true Ethiopian history. And I think we clear that some of what we got as Ethiopian history is being questioned here. So the Kebra Nagast, which is a very integral part of the Ethiopian culture, history, and dynamics, also came under the microscope. You know, I don't know how much Ras Aisha is going to share now, but the Kebra Nagast and its not validity as a valid book, but its authenticity as, you know, this book that is 1,000+ years old and written by sacred people, and then of course the story within it. So when the brother said the New Testament, about 1800s, that came around Ethiopia, Rasta Adonis clearly said, but hey, the Kebra Nagast was hundreds of years before that, and it mentions elements of the same New Testament and etc., etc. So I kind of want us, from those who have that point of view, I would like to hear, so it's on the table, so the scholars can start to feast on it, because that's what I love. What is the reality from our point of view, Rasta sir, as it relates to that Kebra Nagast and its origin, to the best of your understanding?
Well,
and then we can go
greetings
deeper.
to all one, greetings to all one once again. As I continue to make the point, right, as we talk about history, because we use the term, I'll have to say loosely, given the fact that really and truly, history is divided into two fundamental categories, right? Actual history and traditional history. Most time when we refer to anything biblical like the Kebra Nagast and so on, it is usually considered in the context of traditional history, right? It's very important to me that this point come across. You understand?
Of course.
The book itself, the Kebra Nagast itself, you cannot understand. And by the way, let me just, I have two piece of document here, right? One of them is this book here.
Let's see if we can see.
Alliance and Alienation.
Yes.
Right?
We see it good.
Yeah.
That's highly Selassie Golda Meir.
And I also have here a transcript of Prince Ermias' presentation to the, before the Congress Library in 2010 concerning the symbolism, the origin and religious symbolism of the Lion of Judah. I have referenced his writing. I have to go from this angle, all right?
Yeah, man.
Rather than go straight into the Kebra Nagast.
Take your time, man.
I have referenced this document quite a few times. And there have not been a lot of rebuttal to what I say. It's like one's basically listen and just move right along to making whatever point they're making. It would seem without proper consideration to the fact that this brethren, Prince Ermias, he walks this earth to this day, bearing the prestige of being descendant of King David, being from the King David line. All right? And I've listened to him in a number of interviews. And when he's asked questions directly about that, he will simply say, that's our tradition. You understand? He will not seek to really make no factual claim or anything biological. He doesn't emphasize these things. He said, that's our tradition. And I believe because of the way how we learn about these biblical writings traditionally, we are locked into a view that this is all historical meaning. These are things that actually happen. And so when he will make statements like, it is our tradition, it doesn't seem to ring any bell in our minds, so to speak, because we do not have that understanding of history being divided into two basic categories, traditional and actual history. We have done some research, me and Raskwamai, into the authorship of the Kebra Nagast.
Yes.
And we have not been able to turn up anything concrete about where this book originates from. Even in this book here, Alliance and Alienation. All right. Let me just go. I'm going on page 3 here. And this is the subtitle here. Can you see this?
Let me see. Give thanks to those who are, well, I see it, and I've seen exactly what it says.
This here.
And I've seen exactly what it says. And of course, for those on radio, I know, give thanks for your presence. We're just doing this through the Zoom network, so we are visualizing each other. But the brother is going to read what it says.
Okay, good.
Ethiopian, go ahead.
It said Ethiopians' perceptions.
Yes.
All right, between Israel and Jews. Israel as an Ethiopian self-definition. Hear this? Israel as an Ethiopian self-definition, an object of identification. All right? This is the subsection. And when it speaks to the authorship of this book, it says it is still debatable. Okay, because there's really nothing concrete about the authorship. But there's something that is mentioned here that I find quite interesting. All right? Because I'm going to read this a little bit of it for the listeners right now. The glory of kings granted Ethiopian Christians the authority to unify the crown and the cross. During periods in which there was separation between religion and state in Europe, and generation after Eastern Christianity became a chain of minority group under Muslim rule, Ethiopians wrote the glory of kings in order to emphasize that Christianity is the distinct political religion and religion of their sovereign country. The book unites religion and state while connecting Ethiopians' national narrative to early periods of history from biblical times. Through its seal of divine legacy, the glory of king bestow legitimacy, as Ankomajed mentioned earlier, upon the Ethiopian kings, nobility, culture, and the Christianity. The glory of kings has been translated into many languages, including a recent Hebrew edition that includes an introduction containing important observation, the fruit of Dr. Ran Hakohen's research. Now, this section coming up here, just going to read just a little bit more, with a view to consecrating the leaders of Ethiopia. The glory of kings emphasized the direct affinity and identification between the Ethiopian people and the ancient people of Israel. Listen this part now. The plot is based on the biblical account of the visit of the Queen of Sheba to Jerusalem and her meeting with King Solomon. But the Ethiopian version added much more to the encounter. According to the glory of kings, King Solomon tricked Makeda, Queen of Ethiopia, better known as the Queen of Sheba, and won her heart in a night of passion. Back in Ethiopia, she gave birth to Menelik, the son of the king of Israel. When he grew up, he traveled to Jerusalem to meet his father, the wisest of all beings, who then recognized Menelik as his favorite son. Menelik returned to Ethiopia, accompanied by the finest of the Israelites, representing all the tribes of Israel, including the Levites. Now, I'll pause there for a while, just to make the point here, right? That he's actually saying that the book was written by Ethiopian, all right? And the story embellished from the version of the Bible, from that part in the Bible that talk about the visit of the Queen of Sheba and Solomon. That has been embellished and crafted in a way that connects Ethiopia to that religious culture, Judaism, and later on Christianity. Why did the Ethiopian do this? One might ask. The Ethiopian did this for a number of reasons. And a lot of it have to do with the politics surrounding that Middle Eastern area. You understand? Now, one of the things we have to appreciate while we go along about when you're establishing a nation is that the nation have to have a religious philosophy, a religious culture. And usually within that religious culture, it holds all their values, all of their custom, all their cultural way of life and so forth. So you would notice any nation that you come across on earth, they all subscribe to a national religion. You understand? Like a Christian nation, a Muslim nation, and so on and so forth. Why do the nation do this when sometimes within said nations, you will have a diverse amount of religious practices and culture? Ethiopia is one such place. Most of the time we talk about Ethiopia as a Christian nation. One would imagine that the entire geography of Ethiopia subscribe to the particular religious culture that we talk about in Christianity and Judaism. But when you bear in mind that there's over 72 different languages in Ethiopia, it's very likely that you have 72 or more different religious way of life and practices that they also subscribe to. You understand? Yet still, the nation is known to be a Christian nation. You have to ask why this is so. The reason for it is because Ethiopia was aligning themselves with the values and customs that espoused in the Bible, because these values and customs are actually the civilizing element. All the tradition, all the principles that they uphold are actually what civilizes the human being. You understand? Through that spiritual culture.
Wow. Wow.
You see it?
Wow.
So I don't know if like the brethren Adonai would have anything definitive about the origin of the Kebra Nagast. But like so many of the biblical characters, like Matthew, Mark, and Luke, and so on, that is referred to as synoptic gospel, which mean uncertain, fictitious. The Kebra Nagast also bears that kind of characteristic. You understand? Though you cannot deny the effectiveness of the values and so on that is entailed in the book and how it affects people's life, whether in Ethiopia or whether over in Palestine, in Israel. You understand? It is the values that are in the stories that are really important. These things were never about whether they are historical facts or not. It is more the modern mind that query about the facts of things. You understand? The ancient mind understand that this is the way that you convey to the consciousness of a people certain values and custom that basically coalesce everybody together and bring everybody together under one identity as a nation. The Kebra Nagast is actually like an instrument. It is a tool. So when you make arguments concerning whether it is factual or not, you basically bring the book into certain disrepute, because most time you cannot find anything conclusive, definite about the origin of it or the legitimacy of it more than how the nation of whichever nation embraces it. You can't go any further than that. I know, just to wrap up, you know, my presentation, so to speak, I like to go to something that Jeremiah said in this, to go along with what I've been explaining, right? It is said here, it is with great reverence, humility, and some concern, all right? And some concern, I come before you to discuss and explore this topic. My concerns spring from the certain and harsh knowledge that whenever poetry and magic of myth, which I am saying that these stories are mythology. I've been saying this. All right? So, okay, let's take what he's saying within the context of what I have pronounced many times about these writings. My concerns spring from the certain and harsh knowledge that whenever poetry and magic of myth is interpreted as biography, history, it is frequently mortally wounded. I will stop right there. Right? The reason why he's saying that they become mortally wounded, because what they are used for as an instrument, all right, in order to bring a people together as a nation under one system of value. Whenever you start query this along biological and historical line, then question of facts come into play. And then when they cannot prove to be factual, then the value of the writing in terms of how it can bring people together, how it can transport value to the conscious mind of people, that become our loss. Because everybody now start to say, well, if it is not historical, then it's of nuisance value. And they miss the point of how these writings actually effectively order the psyche of people to come under a system of value, that they can identify themselves as a nation living under these divine principles. You understand?
Right. Yes, my
so
lord.
I would wish for once to really look up this speech and go through it, because it makes a difference listening it in the video presentation than when you have it in writing, when you have the transcript in writing and you go through it slowly and see exactly what the brethren is saying about the book. I really have no query about it or opposition to it as a traditional document and the value that it holds to the Ethiopian people, because I understand the effectiveness of it in bringing about the nation of Ethiopia. It is said right here in the same book, Alliance and Alienation, that you cannot, and this will be my last quote, it says here, Ethiopia cannot be understood without reference to its affinity to the Old Testament. Cannot be understood. Now bear in mind that before the Solomonic dynasty went to Ethiopia, Ethiopia existed for thousands of years, not having that tradition with them. So how is it that you cannot understand Ethiopia without these information, these Judeo-Christian references? Question. How is it that you cannot understand it? It's really quite simple. You cannot understand it because the nation, the national ethos of the country is based in these traditions, not what existed before them. I'll just leave it at that, and
I think
I'll respond. We can just reason accordingly as the different brethren present their information. But I just wanted to just highlight these things because the way we are looking at these literatures with our modern mind now, it is making it mean something very different from what it was intended from ancient times.
Clear point, clear point. But what I was saying now, give thanks for clear point. Just remind the audience, you're listening to Rasta round table. So you clearly know what zone you're in. Every Thursday night we come and have these upful discussions. So just make it a habit, make sure you're part of the team, make sure you're part of the regular. And of course, we bring it to you 8 p.m. even in the evening time. Eastern Caribbean time, Eastern Standard Time too. Even a statement that was just made right there at the ceiling about identifying Ethiopia in the Bible. What I was thinking too, what the brother was just saying, what Ras Ison was saying, that so Ethiopia would have existed like thousands of years before the Solomonic tradition, etc. But I think he was, when he's saying that now, so the kind of mind, this is some deep reasoning. This thing is deep. As simple, it sounds simple to a certain degree, but it's deep. Because I know from his perspective, he may be just saying, okay, whenever Solomon and Sheba would have met, Ethiopia exists way before that. But I know from his perspective, the Solomon and Sheba concept is not even nearly close to as old as the storyline of Solomon and Sheba. Remember, the storyline of Solomon and Sheba is 3,000 years old. And from the reasoning that we've been having thus far, I know the brother looks at the story itself, maybe dust it off a couple 100 years old, they just kind of plant it in to fix up the thing. But because how old a story is might be different than how old the storyline of the story is. You can write a story right now and say 10 million years ago. You know what I mean? And so the story got 10 million years ago, but you just write the story. So, I mean, it's a discussion. It's a discussion for the open-minded. Well, got you.
Okay, because in that connection, the point that I'll be making now is that the storyline would not exist before 1000 BC.
Right, I know that's where you're.
Because according to the chronology that's given, the reign of David began 1000 BC. 40 years subsequent to that, then Solomon came into prominence in 960 BC.
Right.
These are the records.
That's the record.
Ironically though, according to Ethiopian tradition, the Solomonic dynasty started 957. That would be 3 years subsequent to when Solomon ascended to the throne.
Right.
And remember, after Menelik I was born, and we can say for the sake of the argument that, let's say Menelik born in the same 960, the same year that Solomon come to prominence. Let's put that on the table just for the sake of the argument. So he born in 960 BC, let's say. But then according to the record in the Kebra Nagast, he would have returned to Jerusalem to visit his father Solomon when he was 22 years old. So if he returned 22 years after his father come to prominence in 960 BC, how is it that the dynasty in Ethiopia started 957, which is 3 years subsequent?
I get you, but okay, but still, let's move forward, because I know we can go into different realms. But this is what I say: the reasoning have many different avenues. It's deep, because a lot of ones listen for the fluff of it, for the entertainment of it. I can tell you that. With anybody that's a serious scholar, because you pull up a book and the brethren pull up the same book, while you showing us the book, he's showing us the same book. So obviously, one's come to this. I don't want to make it sound that way, but well armed, But yeah, man, we're on the same team, we fighting the same enemy. I would like to hear what King Ras Adonis has to put on the table, especially since he has the same material in front of him. So this should be interesting.
Hail up Ison, Ras Ison, in my intro right there. I just had hail up brother Ikuma and honorable priest. So, apologies on that. My mind was turning to find this particular document right here. I don't know if one can, Chan, I don't know if you can see this. The background prevents it from being seen. this particular.
Pull it back a little bit from the camera.
That's it.
Phenotypa and biblical, because that Bernard Lehman text.
Yeah, and actually, LOJ Society, we have the official right. He passed now in Ethiopia, I think in Tigray, around the COVID time, maybe 2020. But
I was trying to, go through, sorry.
Given permission, because we had wrote to him that we wanted to reprint it after we had read a PDF of it. And he told us, we have all the info on that, just in case anybody want to verify it for its authenticity or historicity. He said yes, so we published it, and we've been publishing it, ever since. And so when this particular subject matter, first of all, I just want to give thanks to the item, because something that John Henry Clark said, he only will debate, and I kind of adopt this with his peers. You know what I mean? And especially CERN, you know what I mean? On some subject matters, though, I agree on enough of the I's conclusions, summary conclusions. Some of the details I like to tag forward on, but a very good presentation right there, my brother. I was listening intensively. And this particular document, I finally found it. It was a reason we had a couple of maybe months, about a month or so ago for brethren, and I brought this into exhibition, mainly because it's probably one of the best studies. It's probably one of the best studies of Ethiopian documentation from a conscious of the bias perspective. Let me put it like that, because I'm not going to say the man that had no bias or whatever in him, but he was conscious of the bias that has occurred from a European scholarship and perspective. Like a couple of things that immediately popped out. So I'm gonna kind of touch on this and that for a moment, but I would like to get into more of a dialogue with Brother CERN. Because once I brought this book forward, let's see, pull back. Brother said pull back. Let's see. Yeah. Once he brought this particular book forward, which is Alliance and Alienation. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we were attempting to. Let's do it like this. Yeah, we was attempting to. Once someone to know the book and can take down Haggai Ehrlich, a very good book. And then he also has this particular book. Hopefully we can show this cover right here. We might have to take off the back screen for a moment right here. Let me do this right here. Let's see if this will provide maybe more light. More light. I don't know if more light.
The last IPS you're showing us.
That's beautiful there, boy.
Yeah. Well, this book right here is by Haggai Ehrlich, Haile Selassie, though they don't spell Haile Selassie in the Hebrew correctly. I want you to hear what I'm saying, that even though the European Jews who have kind of captured the whole Judaic perspective, are those who are referenced to and referred to, and I would say historically since 740 AD. And here we put this particular book, Invention of the Jews. Oh man, I'm gonna take off that background so one can see these books. Invention of the Jews by Shlomo Sand. And basically he said the European Jews, the Khazarian and other European Jews, Eastern European Jews that are at the head of the whole Jewish thing nowadays, they basically got into it from 740 AD. So that means if we take their own writings as a point of reference, everything that they talked about before is just based on their commentary. This is a very good book. I'm not going to say on the Kebra Nagast. I don't think on the Kebra Nagast perspective. I just think that it's a very good book from a Haile Selassie and Ethiopia perspective, showing us a different sort of relationship. Like Revelation says that he will make those who say they are Jews to come over to you and to bow down because I have loved you. We can see that in the facts that are mentioned in it, which are not often the usual facts when we hear Ethiopia, Haile Selassie, Jews past and Jews present. But thank you for mentioning that book. I just wanted to show this particular book. This is a Hebrew book on Haile Selassie. It's Yehuda, Melech HaMelakim, Lion of Judah, King of Kings. It's mostly in Hebrew, but they're going to have a prior English one of it soon. This is the same author. I really like this author. He said some things back in the 90s that I came across in my early studies, regarding the Ethiopia and modern state of Israel relationship. This is also another book right here, but I got to get the backgrounds off so one can see some of these books. These are some books that I really like the scholarship on this platform, because once a man brought up that book, I got to recognize we have real scholars who are looking into not just the traditional books that we're used to, like when one say the Kebra Nagast. Yes, the Kebra Nagast. We have to get the name and we have to go into scholarship the way the Greeks, the Romans, and the later Europeans do. Because one thing that my good brother did, right, and I give thanks, is that he basically read from the Alliance and Alienation by Haggai Ehrlich. He read a commentary. It was just a commentary on what they think of Ethiopian documentation. It would not make, if you write your own commentary saying that based on the traditional view, not the so-called modern view, but as you present it, that I might present that in my argument, right? And somebody can say, well, that's just one of your Rasta brethren giving a commentary. But I say, well, he's a scholar. I agree with him. It's a matter of perspective. It's really a matter of perspective. That right there just tells us what somebody else says, even the prince. And Xavier blessed his heart, as ones will say, the prince who wants to be king or emperor or whatever. And I know a lot of our people are all into the monarchy and the monarchist thing, but we're bypassing the roots. That's why this platform and going into these sort of discussions is getting us to become more acquainted with the real roots of this matter for ourselves, not as the Rastafari of maybe the 30s and the 40s and the 50s. And all that is grandfathered and grandmothered in. In other words, they said Rastafari means head creator, right? We started to learn the language and recognize that was half correct. Ras does mean head, but Fetari is creator, and Teferi is to be reverenced. But that doesn't mean that we have to now beat up on our ancestors. We have more access to knowledge and information today. So to what my brother mentioned about what the Crown Prince said at the Library of Congress, we would prefer to go to what the King of Kings, what the King of Kings says, in this particular work right here, where he talks about Ethiopian island of Christianity is recorded as having, Ethiopian island of Christianity is recorded in history as having received first the Old Testament, then the New Testament, earlier than most of the countries in the world. When in Old Testament times she received the law. So in Old Testament times, the law, which in the Ethiopic is called the Orit, which is a form of saying Torah. And Torah is not really the law using translation. It means directions, instructions. And when in New Testament times she received the Gospels, the same, I say pseudo, right? I say pseudo fictitious. People say it's fictitious. I say it's pseudo fictitious. They want you to believe it's fictitious, and perhaps it is, because all we have in this Western Gentile perspective is what they say. As I heard my brother speak, I was thinking about what Jesus Christos, Yeshua HaMashiach, what is said of the Christ in the Bible. What do people say? Who do people say I am? And then he asked them, well, who do you say I am? And so this discussion so far is who other people are saying, Ethiopia and our history is, and hopefully it will bring us to the point that we can say who, what Ethiopia is, to us, and what this tradition is to us. But it says here, she ensured that the scriptures were translated into the ancient language of Ge'ez. Now, he goes on, but I'll stop right there, because when you read that there, people dismiss it and say, well, no, the Ge'ez comes in the Christian times with the 5 saints of, with the, how many saints was it? The 8, the 9 saints, excuse me, the 9 saints in 500, excuse me, I'm rushing through this, but the 9 saints in 500, around 500 AD. And they basically translated not just the Greek, they were Syriac. So Syriac is a form of African Shemitic language. So they had at their disposals the Septuagint, the Syriac, the Aramaic, and they brought this forward and translated that. But before that, there was already in Old Testament times, and we'll bring forward proof from both the European Jewish Encyclopedia and also Ethiopian scholarship to show that when Ezra and Nehemiah returned from the Babylonian captivity, Ezra was uncertain about certain things in the scrolls that he had before him. And they sent to the Ethiopians because they knew that there was a community of Israelites already in the Horn of Africa. I'm just pointing out that ones might dismiss what His Majesty is saying because they're going to certain scholarship that basically is, I'm not saying incorrect in everything, the European or the Greco-Roman scholarship, but it's clearly biased, and we almost don't get the other side of the story. And part of that is because of the linguistic barrier, right? We really have to get into the scholarship and the science of the language. So it doesn't mean that we all have to become fluent or whatnot. I would not even say that I am fluent like I would like to be, but at least when documentation is put before us, such as this. Hold on for a moment. I want to show this right here, such as the, here we go, the Kebra Nagast. I don't know if this will come out. Yeah, this, let's see, the brother said pull back. Let's see if we can pull back. Hold on. Yeah, there we go. Right there. The Kebra Nagast. It's basically the Kebra Nagast in the Ethiopic that we have sat down and compared with the different translations, the different Kebra Nagast translations. And what we find is that there's a remarkable accuracy. You know, I mean, as well, that's dubious right there, because most people only know English, so one would have to understand what the other languages are saying. But notice what the Greeks and the Romans and the Europeans did to us. They have us now battling certain things like history or historicity and synoptic. To my brother Isan, synoptic doesn't mean fiction. Synoptic may be connotated to be fiction. See, a connotation of what something is connotated as, that's the meaning that you may read in, or implication. But the actual synopsis or synoptic comes from the 1610s, and the word synopsis, and it means a general view and outline, from late Latin synopsis. Synopsis, a synopsis from the Greek synopsis, a general view. It basically means a general view. There's other words for fiction. And then when we deal with terms like historicity, a lot of this we basically have gotten because of our searching for our own knowledge, and we come across a lot of other historians use the words in their true sense, and not to get so caught up with what other scholars are doing. That's why I said my brother is like my peer. So I usually choose not to debate, not because I cannot debate, but because, you know, I only debate one who is in the studies as well. Like I could debate the brother about alliance and alienation because I know he has a copy of it. He has read it. He has used it to bolster and to back up points that he's making here. With others that might only have just the basic Kebra Nagast, Ethiopia, maybe they have a Budge translation, maybe they have a Miguel F. Brooks translation, but beyond that, there's, you know, if you quote to them some things, they probably don't remember. So it's not really, they're not on the scholar level. History, let's just touch on history just briefly right here. What does history mean, right? From the late 14th century, I'm talking about 14th century AD, history. In Amharic, we say tariq. There's two kinds of tariqs. There's tariqs that one can create and make up. They call it libe. Lib is heart, libe tariq. And there are other tariqs that are like this definition of history: relation of incidents, whether true or false, story or chronicle, a narrative of past events. It's like today people expected the ancient writers, even the Kebra Nagast writers, to say, well, this is true because we carbon dated something or such and such. Notice what the Gentiles, the other nations, did. They didn't defeat us by intellectualism or historicity. They didn't get to the position that they're at because they were debating us and all of our best scholars lost. And then we say, okay, put the shackles on, put the cuffs on. You see what I'm saying? And what the brother is mentioning, Brother Cern, Rasta Cern, is mentioning about how the Kebra Nagast, these were tools that were used to unite the people under a set of values. I'm not quoting I verbatim, but from what I received and gathered, that is a right and accurate point. I'm just touching on a few things here because I know we already have been in this. The ones were already on the line before, but this is the main book I'd like to touch on right here regarding the Queen of Sheba. Because what the author presents is that actually there's an earlier, it's known in the Tigra region, and it's more in the good. There's an earlier narrative, right? That later on around 1260 with Yakuno Amlak and Tekla Hymenot, they're the ones who restored or renewed the Solomonic dynasty. Some people will say they didn't have no Solomonic dynasty before that, because the Covenant Guest says is the only evidence of it. See, that is looking at it from a false view of it. If you study Ethiopian history, they had conflicts and wars in the north because the Ottoman Turks, are the Ottoman Turks historical people? Was it not them who, not being Arabic people, were Muslims? They adopted Islam as their religion, but they were not Arabs, but they had sent the whole Islamic thing to its greatest heights, as it were, and they were all in the Horn of Africa. They were the ones who were funding and giving arms and support to Ahmed Gran, right? And Ahmed Gran was a Somalian or I'll say generally speaking, a Somali, and you could say a warlord chief who rose up and destroyed, historically speaking, from the Mohammedan, the Muslim, and the Ethiopian around the 1500s, destroyed many sanctuaries, many monasteries, many libraries, many other repositories of history, you know what I mean? And therefore, the rulers who were more in the north, the portion that was Judeo-Christian in Ethiopia was a small portion, to my brother's point about this Judeo-Christian thing, but what about before 1000, BC? That is a good point. But looking at this within the fulfillment that His Majesty is bringing about for what we are facing in this European white Anglo-Saxon Protestantism, we can see that there's a historical connection between a prophecy. But before that, see, if we're going to talk about before that, let's talk about before that. But if we're going to zoom in on the Queen of Sheba and the biblical scholarship, this is probably one of the best books right here, because the author, can I just share this right here? I'd like to just read just a little bit from his back of the book right here. The Queen of Sheba and Biblical Scholarship by Bernard Lehman. I would say Xavier Jack and Mahala Selassie in Yeshua's name, bless his soul. Because this book is banned in Saudi Arabia. Did you know this book is banned? They might put you in prison if you jump off the plane in Saudi Arabia and you have a copy of this.
Give thanks with the heads up.
Huh?
Give thanks with the heads up.
Yeah. I mean, he says so right here. And then as I got more into the research and started to study the book myself, I recognized why. Because even some of the place names, people say the Covenant Guests don't make sense, because they'd say, well, look at the historical or the geographical relation of places and everything. It doesn't seem to be that would be the route that they travel. Maybe where you call, or people call Jerusalem today, was not Jerusalem then. Maybe King David and King Solomon's kingdom wasn't in that exact location, or maybe there was another area that it was connected with. So what he proposes here, as well as other scholars, is that areas such as Jeddah, that they call Jeddah today, where Mecca is and everything, was a part of that kingdom, and it extended from across East Africa to Western Arabia, and it went up to approximately the area of the Levant. I'm just saying that if we get into the studies, what we're going to find out is that from the present worldview, yes, the Covenant Guests can be questioned as to authenticity or even some correctness of detail. But then if we now look into the history and see how some things have been mislabeled, misassociated. It says this book examines evidence connected with the life of Queen of Sheba, including the Sabian inscriptions on the Ethiopian plateau. So we have Sabian, Saba is across the Aden and across the the Eritrean Sea. And they say there are Sabian inscriptions on the Ethiopian side. We hear a lot of people saying that this and that, but that really proves that the Sabians ruled also in the area of Ethiopia. Now, there are other tribes. This is the point I want to make. I'm just pausing right here. There's other tribes. There's other peoples. Some Ethiopians don't like this. I read some native Ethiopians, and they know it's correct, but it's PC. That the Judeo-Christian politic in the area we call Ethiopia was one of the few that was able to unite the majority of other tribes into a kind of a state. That's where they get the King of Kings thing, because the different areas where the different tribes were in ancient Ethiopic history, they were called countries. So what we call provinces or states today were back then called countries. And these countries' rulers was their king or their queen or their monarch. And therefore, the Solomonic or the Judeo-Christian aspect of these Black people were the ones that were able to unite the whole thing. But correct, not all the nation is Christian, right? But then when we say a Christian empire or Christian civilization, Judeo-Christian, this is just saying that these were the ones that were able to unite the majority, not all, right? Because of the Mohammedans, some of them, there was wars with the Mohammedans. They are the ones, they were the outliers. But other tribes were able to unite under the ancient Ethiopian Judeo-Christian, you could say, politic, right? Because they were still guaranteed their own autonomy in their particular regions. So that means the way the Ethiopians practiced this Judeo-Christianity was that in our areas, we worship, we do this. In your areas, you can do that, but keep your things in your areas. But since we all are sharing this land, when there's a war, you will come to the aid of our, of our king. So the Ethiopian Judeo-Christian thing was that most able to unite the peoples. But I disagree with my brother that the reason why it's almost like because people don't use it today. Look at the Jews, the European Jews. I'm gonna say this like this. They use certain things, and I have to point to this book here, another book for the scholars. I hope this shows up. It's empty right here. Yeah, this is Dr. Ben's book. All right, I'll dare say, from my perspective, one of Dr. Ben's best books, because it goes with what I seek to learn and I seek to prove. We, the Black Jews. During this time, there were Black Jews or Black people in the Americas and the Caribbean, but especially here in the Americas and parts of the Caribbean, who were identifying, in fact, the first repatriates, even in the Federation, were those who identified with being Hebrews or Black Jews. Because if you look at the whole narrative of the Bible, the values, it prepares you for something like that, right? But we either we blame the book or we blame the people, because it seems as though some people can use that book better than other people can use the book. And even though everybody's referring to the book, not everybody's equally using the book. The way Ethiopian Christians and Jews use the Judeo-Christian scriptures in their regions and other areas too, where there were Judeo-Christian people, is different than how European people. So we say, oh, the Bible enslaves people. The Bible deceives people. This is a bad deception, because what you're saying is that a book deceives you, and not your knowledge or your lack of knowledge could be the deception. That it's the book itself that deceives you. So I know I bounced around from a few things. I just complete this part about what this book argues right here. I like to go into one point by point, if we can, at this time or in a future time for the brother, because the brother, that was a great presentation. I can't wait to listen to the replay, because you touched on, like, as I listen to it, I will pause it right there and say, let's conversate on that. Or pause it right, huh?
Oh, yeah, right, true. Sorry. Pardon.
Yeah, pause it right there and comment. I'll be right to completion right here. This book examines evidence connected with the life of the Queen of Sheba, including the Sabian inscriptions on the Ethiopian plateau, aspects of the ancient West Arabian language, and geographical references in Ge'ez to the Kebra. Actually, it's Kebra, it's Kebra Nagast in its proper enunciation, Kebra Nagast, to offer a third alternative. It argues that the Old Testament is an accurate account, but its event took place in West Arabia, not Palestine. It suggests that scholars are unwilling to consider such a strong possibility because, if true, it would not only completely undermine the raison d'etre, what they call the raison d'être or raison d'être, the reason for being, the French phrase, like the reason for being of the state of Israel, but also force a total reassessment of biblical, Arabian, and Northeast African history, right? So I just pause right there on that because there's more here, like point by point, points and everything. But this book, as Brother Ikoma mentioned in the first part, when he came on, he talked about the different cycles, that there was an older cycle that was more, for modern terms, a Tigrayan cycle, right? You know, as the people came, in fact, the Amharas are just Tigra people who had intermarried and merged with Cushitic Oromo people. So therefore you get the Amharic language, which is like a Creole of the Northern Semitic and the Southern Cushitic. Therefore, even Amharic, when I say it's African Shemitic or Afro-Shemitic language, like Hebrew, because Hebrew also is a blend of certain so-called Shemitic, the Eastern forms, as well as some Hamitic forms as one language, as one Creole kind of a language. So I just present that right there, but I got the books right here, brothers, and I would love for us to maybe zoom in on certain particular themes or areas, because, you know, this is a big, you know, this is a big study, but I give thanks to Radio Anu and to Priest Isaac and the Institute for having this sort of study that we've been longing for with brothers who are also studying these things. I yield right now. Just a couple of words in response, but give thanks, son. I really love that presentation. Make I reason. Yes, sir.
Yes, beautiful. Let me just come in there a moment now before we go. Yeah, interesting. Give thanks. This is a beautiful moment here. Give thanks to the knowledge. Anyone that is serious about information, you know, it's almost like a vacation kind of program here. Because this program really, you know, is the three founding members of the program is really the host. It's not like it's really I the host, and we practice it that way, you know, to so it have a certain level of balance. But just feeling the spirit here, I say I just have to come in and kind of mediate. Obviously, it's still gonna end up with me, you know. As I said, the buck still have to stop with me, really. You know.
Yeah.
Beautiful discussion here, man. And King Anko Madrid, I want to hear the eye. I know the
yes,
eye.
sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Because I have a sort of stuff that I would like to point out, but with all due respect.
But before he come in there, so many things were said, man, but I can't just go in everything, and I don't want to be long-winded here. Tariq. Now, when you mention Tariq as being two types of history, I couldn't help. You see, what King Ras Ison has been saying, because remember, no, this is really a scholarly, we confine this little gathering here. No? It'll be good that anyone who just joined in this reasoning, especially on YouTube, don't be afraid to revisit them old episodes, because a lot of what we talk, you know, led up to this. We talk about some serious subjects that we might even have to revisit, like evolution and you know, different subject areas that a lot of people don't even want to touch. So from a time, especially since we came into the mythos discussion, because that's how it started. We started with a very good set of programs dealing with the difference between mythos and quote unquote reality, facts, truth. We actually broke down all of these things. You know, so and you know, we came up with a very good psychological understanding. So since that time, the brethren has been saying, not with no anger, you know. Even this evening, I see kind of push it with a little passion, that there are two types of history. You know, he's just saying it like that's what it is. There's history as we know it, like the truth, and there's something that people make up. Not that they're lying, they're not trying to fool nobody. They just set it up a kind of way so that it gives them a certain sort of glory. In a, you know, in a nutshell of what he's saying. So when you, coming now, pardon me, Honorable Mosiah doing this. When you come in with the Tariq and you say it's two types of history, and I listen to the definition of them, but just to ask quickly, is it similar to what the brethren has been saying about the two type of histories that exist?
Yes, yes. If I can say briefly, yes and yes. But on the point about myth, in 1740, if you look at the etymology of the word, because words have meanings, but how we, bad, good, bad, how we interpret the meaning of words change sometime between our parents and us. Our parents use words and said things to mean this, but we say something different. So we see sometimes
church word, and I want to go church word teach us to say mythos, which is differently than the mythology.
Yeah.
Go through
and mythos, when you get to the Greek so-called roots of it, coming to us today, it meant something that was communicated by mouth, basically. But what happened around 1740s among the European and other intellectuals coming in America and other places, they started to look at myth as like before, myth meant like word of mouth, historical myth about the Ethiopia May 5th. He talked about the godless and cruel dragon has risen his head. Is his majesty talking myth, or he's talking about what really happened with Ethiopia or the fascists, and how even if you go further, Vatican means divining serpent. But then he uses this term in his speech, in a world speech, a speech Ethiopia and to everyone in the world, where he talks about the godless and the cruel dragon, and then talk about St. George. So on one level, we'll say, look, there's myth, right? St. George, and then people say he didn't exist, but I think he was a historical character, but there is embellishment. There is embellishment that goes on, but it's a part of our culture as a people. You know what I mean? So even our embellishment may be true. You know what I'm saying? As a part of true history, it may be true. While somebody say, what about Spider-Man? And what about Superman? You mean Übermensch in German? Übermensch, Uber, like Uber means super for everybody. Uber is a German word, and Mensch means man. So Übermensch was something they made up, and some say it goes back to Nazi racism to go along with their narrative. So in a sense, it was a fictitious thing. And even from the very beginning, they put this Superman character out as a clearly fictitious thing, but it was based on real history where certain Europeans were seeing themselves as being the super race of all races, the most perfectly evolved of all races. So myth, I like to follow up on that myth, but the myth is not always a fiction in the sense of, okay, let me say this. Because we're talking about words, right?
I was just asking quickly if you're speaking of that concept from Nietzsche. That's Friedrich Nietzsche with that Superman.
Crazy boy. Okay. I call him crazy boy. Oh, crazy boy Nietzsche. Right. No, not from a Nietzschean way. A Nietzschean way. Okay, let me just share this right here in the time that we have. Myth.
Yeah, go through. Yes. See it up. Because those are so many different.
The Etem Online. Right? Etem Online, this is the most historical that we can get at this point. It tells us how this word was used previously, and we can go to writing to follow. We can go to documentation. Myth, 1830s from the French, mythe, 1818, directly from the from Greek, mythos. So remember, the Latins borrowed a lot from the Greeks, except for government. So Latin says mythos, and the Greek says mythos. So the Greek is the root of this, for this context, speech. Mythos meant speech, muthos, something secret, something spoken. Speech, thought, word, discourse, conversation, story, saga, tale, myth, anything delivered by the mouth. What would we call that in history today? Oral tradition. Isn't a lot of what we have in Africa amongst we as Black, even a lot that we know in our own families? Think about it for a moment. Think about how many stories we got in our families that have been passed on from generation to generation, and we hear about them. And finally, it will come to either us or our children who will sit down and write it down. Now, somebody will look at that writing and say, this is the first time this descendant made up this stuff. This stuff never happened. But it was word of mouth that was passed on. And lest one say the telephone game, our African ancestors and other African and Asian people didn't play like European. In other words, when things were passed on, they regarded the word of mouth very highly. And we know this from studying various different African and even Asian cultures. So that telephone game, if brother passed me a message to pass to brother Ison or Icoma, and I flip it around, I'm in trouble for that. It's not going to be, oh, that's just a telephone game. You know what I mean? It's like you're a false witness. You're a bad messenger. So this word myth, when we get to the very root of it, what we get to find is that it changed its definition right here. Myths are stories about this is from this book, Dictionary of English Folklore. And I want you to just hear this right here because it shows how it kind of changed. They changed the focal point of myth from being oral traditions to being something completely false, because Europeans found that other people had oral traditions that were written down that people regarded as history, but they did not have such oral traditions written down as history. You know what I mean? And therefore they're like, oh, that must be something they made up, because they could not present the comparable. So here it says myths, quote, this is from the Dictionary of English Folklore, stories about divine beings generally arranged in a coherent, this is how they define it. Remember, myth at its root means anything delivered by the mouth.
Deep, man.
That's what it means. Myth at its root, anything delivered by the mouth, right? But then the Europeans later on said, we're going to define myths like this. Myths are stories about divine beings generally arranged in a coherent system. They are revered as true and sacred. They are endorsed by rulers and priests and closely linked to religion. Once this link is broken, this might be to the point that Brother Isern brought up. Once this link is broken and the actors in the story are not regarded as gods, but as human heroes, giants or fairies, it is no longer a myth, but a folktale. So they explain to us how they define myth, the difference between myth and folktale, where the central actor is divine, but the story is trivial. The result is religious legend and not myth, right? And then it says the general sense of, quote, untrue story. The general sense of myth being untrue story, rumor, imaginary, or fictitious object or individual. Guess what? It's from 1840.
Okay, hold on there, King.
1840.
Hold on. In the interest of time, let me just pass to King and Conquer. I always just said, you know, that is so.
Pray that.
Oh, yeah. All what I just said here a moment ago, right? It's so essential. It's like that part, that part, just everything you just see there. It's like that part. If a person will revisit this whole thing, just that part, that just go into a lot of what we've been speaking of. And to me, you know, what I witnessed here a little while ago, you know, is again, King Cern, that concept of that true history. I see it in from my next angle now, you know, and even though the King just break down that a while ago, it covered a lot of what we talked about before, even just when we were trying to tie up between myth is not the truth and all of that. This as an input in them programs, they would almost be like a bomb that dropped. So I pardon Honorable to even cut in like that, you know? But just in the interest of time too, even as the technician, how them lengthy ones just deal with. So it's a long story, but I like to hear what the dread have to say still. You know, we can continue.
True. Yes.
Yeah, my blessing, give thanks. Me good?
Yeah, perfect.
Oh, you can hear me good? Yeah, man.
Perfect. And just quickly in the foreground, what you see I have here, there, you know, I was showing some of the books there I was saying, but where so I have it highlighted, that's at least the account of the Solomon Sheba visitation, Menelik this first, going back to Solomon and coming back to Ethiopia. The full works. This is a piece of it in a kind of allegorical fashion. I think this is some saint receiving the Kebra Nagast too. I don't know if the item could
say. Moses, I think.
Oh,
one of their paintings of Moses receiving the Torah from God. Yeah.
And you mentioned Wallace Budge and just a few looks of the Kebra Nagast for the audience. Yes, my lord.
Yeah, man. Respect. Well, before I say what to say about the conversation, I want to yet again give flowers onto Rasta Tafari and Priest Isaac, because I just acknowledge the two brethren as the preeminent content creators in Rastafari thing on the internet now. You know what I mean? Since a long time on YouTube and whatnot. And a lot of the information that the item would have put out would have helped me in my studies and things like that as well. You know what I mean? So give thanks for that still. So in my assessment of the reasoning so far, it come like it had the three brethren in three different perspectives, right? I would say Ras Ayadonis, from my perspective, I would count him a biblical maximalist and an Ethiopian culture maximalist, right? And then I would probably say Ras Ison is a minimalist, biblical minimalist, and Ethiopian historical narrative minimalist, right? And I would have to espouse that I need moderate, I need middle position at the two different things. And why I would say that now is because when I research in Ethiopian historicity and things like that, it has come to me that around Izana, right? The Izana, now from King Izana time in around the 4th century, the middle of the 4th century, is where it is the change on the coins, right? In the they call it numismatics, the study of the coins and things. You just see the sun disk and crescent moon symbol and things. Certain symbols were representing the pantheon what they used to have in Arabia. You know what I mean? Al-Maka and some of these deities now. And then when he convert to Christianity, you start to see the cross and certain emblems like that representing Christianity. Now, it's have a kind of, to me, it's plausible it would have Judaic elements and groups and things might have make themselves into Ethiopia, but it wasn't like the state religion or anything like that, right? So I would have to say the story of Solomon and Sheba and these things, I would just kind of perceive it in a more fantastical, more legendary sense of the thing, you know what I mean? But then Ras Ison, I think, due to following the scholarship of certain writers and things, I think you have a quite extreme view within placing the origin of certain writings in more modern history. If you understand what we was talking about, even the biblical text and certain things, Ras Ison have it like it in the common era it was created and certain thing like that now, you know. So I think it in terms of I think in like if Kuno Amlak and these brothers, what it is, it have a word anachronistically. They anachronistically created the legendary history of Ethiopian Empire from 1000 BC with Solomon and these things, if you understand. Now in the Bible, when it does say that how in Acts, when it say that Philip baptized an Ethiopian eunuch and whatnot, right? They now inside of there, when they give the personal name Candace, now people is reason and say that is the Kandake, which is a title of certain female rulers from the Meroitic kingdom of Kush and thing then, right? Now, I just see that Ethiopia inherit the legacy of the Cushitic kingdom in that same time and when Izana take over Meru. You understand? Because previously, I come and show on Precise Acting certain certain symbologies and motifs, artistic motifs, where they have with Heru on top of a horseback, and he's striking a crocodile, set in the form of a crocodile. And these are the same motifs as Rasta Rastafari say he's that of Saint George. I mean, he on top the horse and slew in the dragon and these kind of things, you know. And even it have enough little cultural retentions from the ancient Cushitic Empire that reached into modern Ethiopia, and then it kind of, but it overlaid with Christian symbologies and mythologies on top of it, yeah. And like this particularly with Kebra and Nagast now, a lot of people, commentators, as maybe rightly so, as Rasta don't say European commentators and people, there's really give the origin of the Sheba cycle to the Copt or the Alexandrian Coptic Church, right? And they say that that Arabic people, Arabs and things, used to be going to Egypt, and who had the translation of the Coptic text, and they through Arabic brought it to Ethiopia. So they're saying most people would comment and say that the Sheba cycle was brought to Ethiopia through the former Arabic, because when they studying certain personal names and certain loan words and things like that present in the text, you could kind of deduce that it wasn't originally created in the Giz language or whatever it is, right? And then they come and say that the Caleb cycle is in Giz, and then it would have some Ethiopian clerics that would be doing certain translations and whatnot. So the modern text, what would be in all Giz, it had two parts then. One originally from Coptic through Arabic into Giz, and then the Giz text itself. You know? So some of these things now, even Bernard Lehman, the Brethren PhD, I was trying to get in contact with him at a point in time during the COVID, and I realized like last month he passed away, kind of thing. It was disappointing, you know, because I was trying to check up with him, because he just built his arguments on the work of a brother named Kamal Salibi, right, who did talk about the biblical Arabia. You understand? Now Salibi was a professor, I think biblical professor. I forget his credentials primarily, but he was a scholar that ended up do this work that identified many of the biblical names and geographical sites and things. He placed them in the Hijaz there on the western side of Arabia, or around Mecca, Medina, and these kind of places. You know what I mean? And he also have an alternative Exodus story where he's saying that how the Exodus would have passed down through Sudan and them place, through the Bab el Mandeb, which is a small piece of waters that is thing from Ethiopia to Yemen. You understand? He say that they went over there and them kind of thing there. So the Red Sea crossing would have take place in the Bab el Mandeb and these kind of things. So Kamal Salibi work, all just like what we're doing here now, we're probably gonna have to go into his work and assess the scholarly value thereof and all of these kind of things, you know what I mean? So I just enjoying the conversation right now. So this is what I'm getting from it so far, you know, give thanks still. I don't want to be too long. I will share the floor with the brethren.
Yes, my lord, but no, this is gonna be a hard one, and everyone now. How quick you feel we can wrap up this evening? Let's leave some fire for the people, man. The people that see, like I said, that the people just say, "What? Already that good? That good? That means you have to come back next week as we continue." Well, yeah, that's all I say, because as the king said, you know, certain little points too, we could, even after this evening, you know, we can correspond amongst ourselves and say what certain points we might want to home in on, because this is getting deep. This is real scholarly vibes. And if it's books we opening and we have to read, and that's really where it is. I really was planning, if we didn't get to this, honestly, that speech from Hermias would have been next on the agenda, for sure. And it's still on the agenda. I think we need to scholarly as well go through that.
We should.
King Isaac put it on a different level that we should read it. Is the audio I had line up to play, but
yes, sir.
So
My brother. My brothers.
In any way we can seal up in a cycle. Let's say we land in the plane. It's not landed yet.
Okay, yeah.
Take a time to
I might
land.
parachute. I might parachute. Can you hear me?
Yeah, got you.
I might parachute. I might have the parachute. I might have the parachute. I'd like to send a copy of this to all of the brothers on the panel. So maybe through the Honorable Priest Isaac, just send a mailing address. Some reprints that we do, I like to work out things, but I like to send this on to the eye, so the item can, in the eye's own time, have an opportunity to review this. Something that was a medi that I wanted to share here, because I see, I was thinking about it myself, but I see that our brother and the brothers here are already doing it. Rastafari consciousness community. We need a community for the Rastafari consciousness, you know what I mean? And Priest Isaac, the eye is doing it here, and the brothers, minimalist, maximalist, Salidi, you know what I mean? The work that Brother Ras Isern brought forward. Yo, give thanks, man. It's like, I almost feel like I gotta smack myself and say, wait, was that the Aishans, or am I still in a vision? You know what I mean? For real, brother. It's not flattery or nothing. It's just truth and rights, man.
No, respect, King.
I yield. Go through, Isern, I know that the eye waiting to drop a little something. Come on, pilot. Land the plane,
Yeah, well, we good. We just moment we have to put on a seatbelt right about now, so we still cruising in. You can look down and see the lights, the city lights, etc. Yes, King, go ahead.
Okay, yeah, I might just like to share, right? Because one of the things that I find in my research effort, right, is that there is no end to information that you can find to support your argument from this perspective